"Believe in God's strength and rise," said the homeless girl to the millionaire's son. Richard Thompson felt tears streaming down his face as he gripped his son's wheelchair tightly. Another physical therapy session had ended with no progress, and the doctors were speaking in increasingly harsh terms about Michael's chances of recovery. That's when a soft voice reached his ears. Turning around, he saw a girl with brown hair tied in a simple ponytail, wearing a faded pink dress that had seen better days. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. "The boy needs to believe in the strength inside him," the girl said, looking directly at Michael, who had passed out after the exertion of therapy. Richard felt a mix of irritation and curiosity. How had this child gotten in here? The private clinic where he took Michael was located in one of the most upscale neighborhoods of New York City, surrounded by high walls and strict security. "Little girl, you shouldn't be here." "Ooh, where are your parents?" Richard asked, trying to keep his voice calm. The girl didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer to the wheelchair and gently placed her hand on Michael's arm. The boy, who had lost consciousness moments earlier, slowly opened his eyes. "Believe in God's strength and rise," she whispered, looking into his eyes. Michael blinked a few times, as if waking from a deep dream. For the first time in weeks, Richard saw a different spark in his son's gaze. Not exactly hope, but something close to it. "Who are you?" Michael managed to murmur, his voice hoarse after so long in silence. "My name is Emma," the girl replied with a shy smile, "and I know you can get better." Richard felt a shiver run down his spine. There was something in the simplicity of those words that touched him deeply. But soon, reason took over. This girl clearly didn't belong here, and her presence might pose some risk. "Emma, you need to leave now," Richard said, trying to sound firm but not harsh. "This isn't a place for children to play." "I'm not playing, sir," Emma replied, her calm unchanged. "I see a lot of people like Michael where I live, and some of them get better when they truly believe." "And where do you live?" Richard asked, growing more intrigued. Emma hesitated before answering. "At Union Square, sometimes at Mrs. Wilson's shelter, when there's room." Richard's heart tightened. A child living on the streets alone, but at the same time part of him grew frustrated. How could anyone let such a young child wander the streets and end up in a private clinic? "Michael, let's go," Richard said, starting to push the wheelchair. "Dad, wait," Michael murmured, turning to look at Emma. She made me feel different." Richard stopped. It had been months since Michael had shown interest in anything or anyone. Since the accident that left him paralyzed, the boy had withdrawn into a world of silence and sadness that even the best psychologists couldn't penetrate. "What do you mean, son?" "When she touched my arm, I felt something strange, like there was a warm light inside me," Michael explained, looking at his own hands. Emma smiled again, but this time Richard noticed a deep sadness in her eyes. "It's because you have a lot of strength inside you, Michael. You just need to remember how to use it." "And how do you know that?" Richard asked, now genuinely curious. "My grandma used to say that when we help someone believe, we become stronger too," Emma replied. "She took care of people who couldn't walk well." Something stirred in Richard's chest. There was a sincerity in this child that was impossible to ignore. But there was also a harsh reality. He couldn't simply trust a homeless girl with his son's recovery. "Emma, I appreciate your words, but Michael needs specialized medical treatment," said Richard, trying to be kind yet firm. "I know that," she replied, "but doctors take care of the body. Someone needs to take care of the heart." Before Richard could respond, a nurse appeared in the hallway. "Mr. Thompson, Dr. Bennett would like to speak with you about the next steps in the treatment." Richard looked at Emma, then at Michael, who still kept his eyes fixed on the girl. "Emma, I need to talk to the doctor now. Do you have a safe place to stay?" The girl nodded, but Richard noticed the hesitation in her movements. "Dad, can she come back tomorrow?" asked Michael, surprising everyone. Richard was silent for a few seconds. Michael hadn't shown interest in seeing anyone for months. Not even his school friends could get more than a few words out of him. "We'll see, son. First, I need to understand this situation better." Emma stepped closer to the wheelchair once more. "Michael, While I'm gone, try moving your toes very slowly every day, and think about good things you want to do when you get better." "Do you really think I'll get better?" asked Michael, with a vulnerability that broke Richard's heart. "I'm sure of it," Emma replied with a conviction that even surprised Richard, "but you need to be sure too." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, the nurse began to show impatience, and Richard knew he couldn't delay the doctor's consultation any longer. "Emma, where exactly can I find you tomorrow?" he asked. "In the morning, I'm near the traffic light at Broadway and 42nd Street, selling candy to help Mrs. Wilson with the shelter's expenses." Richard nodded and began pushing Michael's wheelchair down the hallway. When he looked back, Emma had disappeared as if she'd never been there. The consultation with Dr. Bennett was like all the others, technical, detailed, and disheartening. The test showed Michael hadn't made any significant improvement in the last 3 months. The muscles in his legs were losing strength, and there were signs his depression was affecting his physical health too. "Mr. Thompson, I strongly recommend we consider more intensive psychiatric care for Michael," the doctor said, adjusting his glasses. "The emotional side of treatment is just as important as the physical." Richard nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept thinking about the girl and Michael's reaction. In nearly a year of treatment, nothing had sparked the boy's interest like those few minutes with Emma. On the way home, Michael was mostly silent, but Richard could sense something was different. The boy seemed more alert, looking out the car window with a focus he hadn't shown in months. "Dad, are you really going to look for Emma tomorrow?" Michael asked as they neared home. "I'm thinking about it, son. But you understand she's just a child, right? She can't do anything the doctors can't." "I know," Michael replied, "but she made me feel like maybe I can try again." Those words echoed in Richard's mind all night. Jennifer, his wife, had traveled again for work. Since Michael's accident, she had thrown herself into her job almost obsessively, as if staying away from home was easier than facing the reality of their son's condition. Richard spent his nights reading about every possible treatment, searching for some hope the doctors hadn't mentioned. But that night, he caught himself thinking about Emma and how a homeless child had managed to awaken something in Michael that thousands of dollars in treatments hadn't. The next morning, Richard woke up with a decision made. He would look for Emma. He found her exactly where she said she'd be, sitting on the ground near the traffic light with a box of candies beside her and a shy smile for each person who passed by. Many ignored her. Some bought candies, few stopped to talk. Richard watched from a distance for a few minutes before approaching. There was something about Emma's posture that intrigued him. Despite her clearly difficult situation, she didn't seem defeated. There was a dignity in her movements that was surprising for someone so young. "Emma?" Richard called, stepping closer slowly. The girl looked up and smiled when she recognized him. "Hi, Mr. Thompson. How's Michael today?" Richard was surprised. He hadn't told her his name at the clinic. "How do you know my name?" "I heard the nurse call you yesterday," Emma explained, standing up and brushing the dirt off her clothes. "Is Michael okay?" "He's different," Richard admitted. "Last night he did something he hasn't done in months. He asked if he could try moving his legs in today's physical therapy." Emma's face lit up. "I knew he'd want to try again. He has eyes that haven't really given up. Emma, I need to ask you some questions. Are you really living on the streets? Do you have any family?" The joy on the girl's face dimmed slightly. "My grandma passed away last year. She was all I had. After that, the people at the shelter tried to help me. But there are so many kids and not enough space. And your parents? I never met my dad. My mom, she had problems with drinking. Grandma raised me since I was little." Richard felt his chest tighten. This girl carried pain as deep as Michael's, but in a completely different way. "Emma, what did you mean yesterday when you said your grandmother took care of people who couldn't walk well?" Emma's eyes brightened again. "Grandma Ruth worked at the church senior center. She wasn't trained in anything, but she had a special way of helping people who had trouble moving. She said you had to take care of the sadness first, then the body would follow." "And did she teach you anything?" "She took me with her sometimes. I'd talk to the elderly while she did exercises with them. I learned by watching and listening. Richard fell silent for a moment, processing the information. There was something deeply touching about Emma's story, but also a practical concern. How could a 7-year-old really help with Michael's treatment? Emma, would you like to see our home? Michael would really like to see you again. The girl hesitated. I don't want to be a bother, and she glanced at her clothes. I'm not really dressed for a rich person's house. Don't worry about that, Richard said kindly. Michael needs friends, and after what happened yesterday, I think you two might be able to help each other. The drive to the Thompson home was an eye-opening experience for Richard. Emma watched everything through the car window with genuine curiosity, but without the greed or envy he might have expected from a child in her situation. She asked questions about the buildings, the trees, the people they passed on the street. There's so much going on here, Emma remarked. Union Square is busy too, but it's different. There, people seem more tired. And here? How do they seem? Richard asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. In a hurry? Emma answered after thinking for a moment. As if they were always chasing after something. Richard reflected on that observation. It was a pretty accurate description of how he himself felt most of the time, always chasing after treatments, specialists, solutions for Michael. When they arrived at the Thompson mansion, Richard saw through Emma's eyes how impressive his home must have seemed. The automatic gate, the well-kept garden, the imposing facade. But the girl didn't seem intimidated, just respectfully curious. Michael was in the living room, in his wheelchair, looking out the window. When he saw his father arriving with Emma, his face lit up in a way Richard hadn't seen in months. Emma, you really came. Of course I did, she replied, approaching him with the same warmth as the day before. How are you feeling today? Better, Michael said, and Richard realized it was true. The boy seemed more alert, more present. I did what you told me. I tried moving my toes this morning. And did you? A little. I think so. I'm not sure. Emma nodded as if that answer was exactly what she'd expected. That's how it is at first. Your body needs to remember how to do things. My grandma explained that to me a few times. Mrs. Parker, the Thompsons' housekeeper of over 15 years, appeared in the room just then. Richard saw the disapproval on her face when she noticed Emma. Mr. Richard, would you like me to prepare something for your guest? Mrs. Parker's tone made it clear what she thought about Emma's presence in the house. Richard felt a flash of irritation, but tried to keep his composure. Mrs. Parker, this is Emma. She's Michael's friend. Please prepare a snack for her and treat her with the same respect you would any other guest of ours. Mrs. Parker gave a stiff nod and left the room. Richard knew he'd have a difficult conversation with her later. Michael, why don't you show Emma your room? Richard suggested. The next few minutes were a revelation for Richard. As Michael showed Emma his toys and books, Richard observed a dynamic he hadn't seen in a long time. Michael was excited, talking more than he had in weeks. And Emma showed genuine interest in everything the boy shared, asking questions and making comments that clearly made Michael happy. But it was when Emma saw the physical therapy equipment in Michael's room that something shifted in her expression. Michael, do you use these things every day? The therapists come 3 times a week, but I hate it. It hurts and it never helps. Emma walked over to the equipment and examined it with surprising seriousness for her age. Grandma Ruth always said the machine doesn't do the work by itself. The person has to want it to work. But I do want to get better, Michael protested. I really do. Wanting to get better is different from believing you will get better, Emma said, sitting on the floor beside Michael's chair. When you do the exercises, do you think about what you'll be able to do when you're better? Michael was quiet for a moment. I try not to think, because then it hurts less when it doesn't work. Richard's heart clenched. Without realizing it, Michael had developed a way of protecting himself emotionally, one that was sabotaging his own treatment. Michael, can I tell you a story? Emma asked. The boy nodded. At the shelter where my grandma worked, there was a man named Mr. Wilson. He'd fallen off a ladder and couldn't move his right leg. The doctors said he'd stay like that forever. Michael listened intently. At first, Mr. Wilson did his exercises just like you, kind of sad not really believing they'd work. Then my grandma asked him what his dream was. You know what he said? What? That he wanted to dance with his wife on their 50th wedding anniversary, which was 6 months away. And did he manage to? He did, but not because the exercises were different, because he started doing each exercise thinking about the music that would play on their anniversary. Michael fell silent, processing the story. "What's your dream, Michael?" Emma asked gently. "What do you really want to do when you can walk again?" Richard saw tears forming in his son's eyes. I want to play soccer with my friends again. They stopped visiting because they think I get sad when they talk about soccer. Then we can do the exercises with that in mind, Emma said simply. With every kick you'll take, every goal you'll score. Richard watched this exchange with a mix of emotion and skepticism. On one hand, he saw Michael more excited than he had been in months. On the other, he worried about creating unrealistic expectations that could lead to even greater disappointment. Mrs. Parker brought in the snacks at that moment. Sandwiches, fruit and juice for the children. Richard noticed she had put extra care into the presentation despite her initial disapproval. Perhaps the conversation she had overheard had made her reflect. "Emma, can I ask you a personal question?" Richard said as they were all eating. "Of course. How do you manage to hold on to that hope after everything you've been through?" Emma chewed a bite of her sandwich thoughtfully before answering. "My grandma used to say we always have two choices. Focus on what we've lost or on what we can still gain. When I get really sad, I think about the people I can still help." "And do you really think you can help Michael?" "I know I can," Emma replied with a conviction that surprised Richard. "Making him walk again isn't up to me. That's between God and the doctors. But I can help him truly want to walk again." Richard felt something stir inside him. There was a wisdom in those words that went beyond Emma's years. And more importantly, there was a genuine hope that was clearly rubbing off on Michael. "Dad, can Emma come back tomorrow too?" Michael asked. Richard looked at Emma, who waited for his answer expectantly. "Emma, would you like to stay with us for a few days? We have plenty of rooms, and you could help Michael with his exercises while I look for a more permanent solution for your situation." The girl hesitated. "I don't want to be a burden, and there are other kids at the shelter who need help too." "How about this?" Richard suggested. "You stay here during the week and go back to the shelter on weekends to help the other kids. And I can make a donation to help Mrs. Wilson with expenses." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You'd really do that?" "Of course, Michael needs a friend and you need a safe place to stay, and something tells me you two can help each other a lot." Michael smiled wider than Richard had seen in nearly a year. "Does that mean you'll stay?" Michael asked Emma. "If you really want me to," she replied, still a little hesitant. "I really do. We can train together. You help me with the exercises, and I'll help you with other things." "What other things?" Emma asked curiously. "I can teach you to read better and do math. My dad hired the best tutors for me." Richard felt his heart warm. Michael was offering help, showing concern for someone else. These were signs of emotional recovery no doctor had managed to spark. "Then it's settled," Richard said. "Emma, we'll get your things from the shelter, and you'll stay with us this week." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The rest of the afternoon flew by. Richard called Mrs. Wilson's shelter and spoke with her, who was initially suspicious but eventually agreed to the arrangement when he explained the situation and committed to a monthly donation. When they went to pick up Emma's belongings, Richard was shocked by the simplicity of her possessions. Just a few clothes, a worn-out stuffed bear, and a notebook where she jotted down things she learned by observing people. "This notebook is very important to me," Emma explained, hugging it to her chest. "It has everything my Grandma Ruth taught me and other things I learned on my own." "May I see?" Richard asked, curious. Emma hesitated but then handed him the notebook. Richard flipped through the pages and was amazed. There were simple yet detailed sketches of physical therapy exercises, notes on how to talk to sad people, even recipes for teas that helped with pain. "Emma, this is incredible." You learned all this just by observing and by asking, she replied. People like to teach when you ask with respect. Back at the mansion, Richard introduced Emma to the rest of the household staff. Besides Mrs. Parker, there was Robert, the driver, and Margaret, the cook. Reactions were mixed, but Richard made it clear Emma was welcome and should be treated kindly. At dinner, Jennifer called from her business trip. Richard. Michael seemed different when I spoke to him earlier, more upbeat. Did something happen? Richard hesitated. Jennifer had grown increasingly skeptical about anything that might give Michael false hope. He decided to keep it simple. He made a new friend, a very special girl who's staying with us for a few days. A friend? From where? It's a long story, Jennifer. When you get back, I'll explain better. But Michael really is doing better, more hopeful. There was a pause on the other end. Richard, please tell me you're not getting carried away by something unrealistic. We've been through this before. I know, love, but this time is different. Michael is different, more alive. After dinner, Richard walked Michael and Emma to the room prepared for her, one of the guest rooms, simple but comfortable. Emma, thank you so much for everything you did for Michael today, Richard said. It's been a long time since I've seen my son so happy. He's a really good boy, Emma replied. He was just sad. Sometimes sadness makes us forget the good things we can still do. And you? Don't you ever feel sad? Emma nodded. I do. Especially when I think about my grandma Ruth. But she taught me that sadness passes faster when we help someone. Richard said goodnight to the children and went to his office where he usually worked late. But that night, instead of reviewing contracts or analyzing financial reports, he found himself thinking about the conversation he'd witnessed between Michael and Emma. There was something deeply moving about how that 7-year-old girl saw the world. Despite all the hardships she'd faced, she held onto a capacity for hope and compassion that was almost startling. Richard remembered his own childhood before he built his business empire. He too had known poverty, had struggled to rise from difficult circumstances, but somewhere along the way, he'd lost that simple way of seeing that Emma still had. The next morning, Richard woke early and went to check how Emma had spent her first night in the house. He found her already awake, carefully making the bed and looking out the window. Good morning, Emma. Did you sleep well? Good morning, Mr. Richard. Yes, I slept, thank you. The bed is very soft. Sometimes I woke up thinking I was dreaming. And Michael, is he awake yet? Not yet. But I heard him talking to himself in his room last night. I think he was practicing. Practicing what? The movements he'll make when he starts walking again. He was planning how he'll run. Richard felt a lump in his throat. Michael, planning to run. It had been months since the boy even mentioned walking, let alone running. When Michael woke up, Richard noticed a natural dynamic developing between the two children. Emma helped Michael with simple toe exercises, while Michael taught Emma to read harder words in her school books. Dad, can I ask you something? Michael said during breakfast. Of course, son. Can you ask Dr. Bennett if Emma can come with me to my next physical therapy session? She has some ideas he might like to hear. Richard hesitated. Taking Emma to the clinic meant exposing the situation to the doctors, and he wasn't sure how they'd react. Michael, doctors have very specific methods. I don't know if... Please, Dad. I promise I'll try harder in my exercises if she's there. Richard looked at Emma, who was waiting quietly for his answer. What do you think, Emma? I don't want to interfere with the doctor's work, she replied. But if Michael thinks it'll help, I can go just to support him. All right, I'll call the clinic and see if it's possible. The call to Dr. Bennett was interesting. At first, the doctor was skeptical about having an outside child present during the session. But when Richard explained the improvement in Michael's mood and motivation, the doctor agreed to meet Emma. Mr. Thompson, anything that can motivate Michael to engage more in his treatment is welcome. But make it clear she can't interfere with medical procedures. Of course, doctor, she understands. That afternoon's physical therapy session was revealing. Michael showed a willingness to do the exercises that even surprised the therapists. Emma sat quietly in a chair in the corner, watching, but her presence clearly gave Michael strength. Michael, you're much more energetic today, commented Jessica, the physical therapist. Any news at home? Michael looked at Emma and smiled. My friend is helping me remember why I want to get better. And how does she do that? She made me think about the soccer games I want to play when I can walk again, about the goals I'll score. Jessica followed Michael's gaze and noticed Emma for the first time. And you're the special friend? Emma nodded shyly. I'm Emma. I just came to cheer Michael on. It's good to have you here, Emma. Michael really is more motivated today. Midway through the session, Michael managed to slightly move the toes on his right foot. It was a subtle movement, but everyone in the room noticed. Michael, did you see that? Jessica exclaimed excitedly. You moved your toes. Michael looked at Emma with surprise and joy. I did it. Emma, did you see? I did it. Emma stood up from her chair, eyes shining with emotion. I saw. I knew you could do it. Richard felt tears welling up in his eyes. It was the first time in nearly a year that Michael had shown any voluntary movement in his legs. Jessica was visibly moved too. Michael, this is very important progress. How do you feel? Different, Michael answered, still looking at his feet. Like I'm remembering how to do it. Exactly, Emma said softly. Your body is remembering. After the session, Dr. Bennett wanted to speak with Richard privately. Mr. Thompson, I have to admit, I'm impressed. Michael showed more progress today than in the last 3 months of treatment. And what does that mean? It means the psychological aspect of the treatment is more important than we thought. That girl's presence is clearly having a significant positive effect. Richard felt a mix of relief and worry. Doctor, do you think Michael could really walk again? It was always a possibility, but the emotional block was preventing any progress. If he stays this motivated, the chances increase considerably. On the way home, Michael couldn't stop talking about the movement he'd managed to make. Emma, do you think I'll be able to move my toes again tomorrow? I'm sure of it, maybe even more than that. How can you be so sure? Because you really want to get better now. Before you were just trying, it's different. Richard reflected on that distinction. There was a depth in Emma's perception that was surprising. She could see emotional nuances even the specialized psychologists had missed. When they got home, Michael immediately wanted to call Jennifer to share his progress. Mum, I moved my toes today. The physical therapist was so excited. Richard listened from a distance and heard the emotion in Jennifer's voice on the other end. She asked many questions, but Michael was so excited he spoke in a rush. Mum, when you come back, I want you to meet Emma. She's amazing. She helps me believe I'll really get better. After the call, Richard had a more serious talk with Emma. Emma, I need you to understand something important. Michael is placing a lot of hope in your presence here. I need to be sure you won't suddenly disappear. I won't disappear, Mr. Richard. Michael is my friend now, and friends don't abandon each other. But you're very young, sometimes circumstances change and people don't have a choice. Emma grew serious. My grandma always said when God puts someone in our path to help, we have to stay until the work is done. And when do you think the work will be done? When Michael doesn't need me to believe in himself anymore. Richard was struck by the maturity of her answer. There was a wisdom in Emma that went far beyond her 7 years. In the following days, Richard noticed a gradual change not just in Michael, but in the whole household's dynamic. Emma had a natural way of connecting with everyone, slowly breaking down initial resistance. Mrs. Parker, who had disapproved at first, began noticing how Emma always offered to help with small tasks and thanked everyone with genuine gratitude. Mr. Richard, Mrs. Parker said one day, that girl has such good manners. She's not like other children who've passed through here. How so? She doesn't ask for anything, doesn't complain, and always wants to help. And the way she looks after Michael, it's like she was born for it. Robert, the driver, had also been won over by Emma's simplicity. Mr. Richard, that girl asks questions about the city that make me think about things I'd never noticed. She sees the world differently. How so? Yesterday, she asked me why some traffic lights stay red longer than others. I'd never thought about it. Then she said maybe it's because in some places, people need more time to cross, things like that. Richard began to realize Emma had a natural gift for observation and empathy, positively affecting everyone around her. But with Michael, the change was most evident. The boy had not only regained motivation for physical therapy, but also interest in other activities. He started asking to watch cartoons again, began asking questions about school, and even showed curiosity about his father's business. "Dad, when I get better, can you teach me about your company?" Michael asked one day. Richard was surprised. Michael had never shown interest in the family business before. "Of course, son. But why this sudden curiosity? Emma said that when we have a lot, we can help a lot of people. I want to learn so I can help other kids like her." Richard looked at Emma, who was reading a book in the corner of the room. "Is that really what you said, Emma?" "I said you must be a very special person to take such good care of Michael and still be able to help the shelter," she replied, without lifting her eyes from the book. "And that people like that can make a big difference in the world." Richard felt something stir in his chest. It had been years since he thought about his business in terms of helping others. He had become so focused on results and numbers that he'd lost sight of the greater purpose behind his work. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. A week after Emma arrived, Jennifer returned from her business trip. Richard was nervous about how she'd react to the girl's presence in the house and to the changes in Michael. Jennifer arrived late in the afternoon. While Michael and Emma were in the living room doing adapted physical therapy exercises Emma had created based on her observations at the church senior center. "Michael," Jennifer called as she entered the room. Michael turned immediately, a huge smile on his face. "Mom, look what I can do!" Michael focused and managed not only to move his toes, but also to slightly bend his right knee. It was a small but visible movement. Jennifer dropped her purse, bringing her hands to her mouth. "Michael, how?" "Emma helped me remember how to do it," Michael explained, beaming. "Mum, this is Emma." Jennifer looked at the girl sitting on the floor beside Michael's chair. Emma stood up and gave a respectful little bow. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Jennifer. Michael talks about you a lot." Jennifer was silent for a few seconds, clearly processing the scene before her. "Emma, Richard told me a little about you. Nice to meet you." Richard walked into the room just then and immediately sensed the tension in the air. "Jennifer, welcome back. How was the trip?" "Productive," Jennifer replied, not taking her eyes off Michael. "Michael, can you really move your leg?" "I can. Want to see again?" Michael repeated the movement, this time with even more confidence. Jennifer stepped closer and knelt beside the chair. "My son, I can't believe it. How did this happen?" "Emma taught me that I needed to really believe, not just pretend to, and she helped me remember the things I want to do when I get better." Jennifer looked at Emma again, this time with a different expression. "Emma, can I speak with you privately?" Richard felt immediate concern. Jennifer could be very direct when processing strong emotions. "Jennifer, maybe it's better—" "It's okay, Dad," Michael interrupted. "Mom, Emma is amazing. You'll like her." Jennifer and Emma went out to the garden. Richard stayed with Michael, trying to hide his anxiety about what Jennifer might be saying to the girl. "Dad, do you think Mom liked Emma?" "I'm sure she did, son. Your mom just needs time to process all the changes." In the garden, Jennifer and Emma walked slowly among the flower beds. "Emma, I need to understand something. What exactly did you do with my son?" Emma stopped walking and looked at Jennifer seriously. "I didn't do anything special, Mrs. Jennifer. I just helped him remember he's strong." "But how? He was so discouraged. Nothing we did seemed to work. Sometimes when we're very sad, we forget the good things we still have. Michael just needed someone to believe in him without pity." Jennifer stopped, surprised by the simplicity and depth of the answer. "Without pity?" "Yes." Everyone looked at Michael with pity. Pity is different from care. Pity makes a person feel broken. Care makes them feel valuable. Jennifer felt tears forming in her eyes. She realized this was exactly how she had started to see Michael since the accident. "And you don't pity him. I care for him. Michael isn't broken. He just forgot how to use the strength he has." Jennifer sat on a garden bench and motioned for Emma to sit beside her. Emma, Richard told me you live on the streets. How does a child in your situation have this wisdom? My grandma taught me that when we go through hard things, we can choose to stay angry or learn to help others who face the same struggles. And you chose to help. I did. It's easier not to be sad when we're helping someone. Jennifer stayed silent for a few minutes, watching Emma. There was a peace in this child that was almost unsettling. How could someone so young who had endured so much maintain such serenity? Emma, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Don't you ever get angry? Don't you resent the unfairness of your life? Emma thought before answering. Sometimes I do, especially when I'm hungry or when I miss my grandma so much. But my grandma always said anger is like fire. It can burn everything around you, or it can be used to cook something good. And how do you use your anger to cook something good? When I get angry at injustice, I use that fire to help someone. Then the anger turns into determination. Jennifer felt something deep shift inside her. For months, she had battled constant anger at Michael's condition, at her own helplessness, at the unfairness of it all. But she had never considered turning that anger into something constructive. Emma, I need to apologize to you. Why, Mrs. Jennifer? Because when Richard told me about you, I had my doubts. I thought you might be taking advantage of the situation or giving Michael false hope. You don't need to apologize. It's normal to be careful about strangers around your children. But I was wrong. You've truly helped my son in a way none of us could. Michael helped himself, I just showed him he could. Jennifer looked at Emma with growing admiration. There was a genuine humility in this girl that was deeply moving. Emma, I have a confession to make. I've been avoiding home because I couldn't bear seeing Michael suffer every day. It's easier to stay away and pretend everything's fine. You love Michael very much. Sometimes love hurts so much we want to run from the pain. But you don't run. I have nowhere to run, Emma replied with a sad smile. But I've learned that sometimes the only way out is through the pain, not away from it. Tears streamed down Jennifer's face. This 7-year-old girl was giving her a life lesson no therapist had managed to convey. Emma, will you teach me how to see Michael without pity? To help him the way you are? Of course, but you already know how. You just need to remember the Michael who existed before the accident and see that he's still there inside. When they returned home, Richard immediately noticed something had changed in Jennifer's expression. There was a softness in her eyes that he hadn't seen in months. Michael, come here, said Jennifer, moving closer to her son's chair. Michael approached, curious about the change in his mother's tone. Son, I want to apologize for being away for so long, and I want to tell you how proud I am of the progress you've made. It's okay, Mom. I understand why you needed to travel. No, Michael. It wasn't okay. I was running away because I was afraid of seeing you sad. But now, I want to stay here and help you get better. Michael hugged Jennifer tightly, and Richard saw tears in both their eyes. Mom, can Emma stay with us forever? Jennifer looked at Emma, who was watching the scene with a shy smile. If she wants to, of course. But let's talk about it calmly. That night, after the children went to bed, Jennifer and Richard had a long conversation about Emma and how to proceed. Richard, I have to admit I was completely wrong about this girl. She has a wisdom that's almost impossible to believe. I know. She's completely changed the dynamic of the house, and not just with Michael. All of us are different. But she's a child, Richard. A child who's been through terrible trauma. We can't just forget that and place the entire responsibility for Michael's recovery on her shoulders. You're right. I've been thinking about that too. Maybe we should seek psychological help for Emma to make sure she's dealing well with her own issues. And we also need to think long-term. What happens to Emma? She can't stay dependent on our goodwill forever. Richard nodded. These were valid and important concerns. Jennifer, I've been thinking, what if we officially adopted Emma? She clearly has no family, and Michael already sees her as a sister. Jennifer was silent for a few seconds, considering the proposal. That's a very serious decision, Richard. Adoption isn't just about goodwill. We'd have to be prepared to be the parents Emma needs for at least the next 15 years. And you don't think we're ready? I think we need to talk to Emma first, understand what she wants, her dreams, her fears. She might not want to be adopted. Richard agreed. It was important to include Emma in the conversation about her own future. The next morning, the four of them had breakfast together for the first time. Richard observed the natural dynamic that had developed. Michael and Emma talked about the day's exercises. Jennifer asked Emma about her favorite foods, and everyone seemed genuinely at ease with one another. "Emma," Jennifer said after a while, "Richard and I would like to talk to you about something important." Emma looked at the two adults attentively. "We were thinking, how would you feel if we officially adopted you? You'd become our legal daughter, and Michael would be your brother." Emma went completely still for a few seconds, as if she hadn't understood the question. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious," Richard replied, "but we want you to think carefully. Being adopted means you'd have responsibilities too. You'd have to go to school, follow house rules, all the things children do." "And could I keep helping Michael?" "Of course," said Jennifer, "but you'd also have your own life, your own activities, your own friends." Emma looked at Michael, who was waiting eagerly for her answer. "Michael, do you really want me to be your sister?" "I really do," Michael answered without hesitation. "We can grow up together and always help each other." Emma smiled, but Richard noticed a hint of worry in her eyes. "Can I think about it a little?" "Of course," Jennifer said. "It's a very important decision. Take as much time as you need." Later that day, Richard found Emma sitting alone in the garden, looking up at the sky. "May I sit here with you?" "Of course, Mr. Richard." "What are you thinking about?" "Many things," Emma replied. "It's a dream I didn't even know I could have. But you seem worried." "I keep thinking, what if I'm not a good daughter? What if I disappoint you all?" Richard felt his heart tighten. "Emma, why would you think that?" "Because I don't know how to be the daughter of rich people. I don't know the right manners, the things I'm supposed to do." "Emma, look at me," Richard said, turning to face her. "In 1 week, you've done more for our family than we've managed to do for ourselves in a year. You brought joy back to Michael, helped Jennifer find the courage to stay home, and reminded me of what truly matters in life." "But..." "No buts. You don't need to change a thing about yourself. We want to adopt exactly who you are." Emma stayed silent for a few minutes. "Mr. Richard, may I ask you something?" "Of course. If I accept, can I still visit the shelter on weekends and keep helping other children?" "Not only can you, but you should. That's what you love to do, and we want to support your interests." "And what if Michael gets completely better and doesn't need me anymore?" Richard smiled. "Emma, families don't work that way. Just because Michael improves doesn't mean you'll stop being important to him. Siblings help each other their whole lives, in different ways." Emma nodded slowly. "I want to accept. But there's one condition." "What is it?" "I want you to promise me that if I do something wrong, you'll teach me how to do it right. You won't give up on me." Richard felt tears forming in his eyes. "Emma, that's exactly what parents do, and I promise we'll never give up on you." That night, the Thompson family officially gained a new member. Emma still had to go through the legal adoption process, but emotionally she was already part of the family. Michael was overjoyed at the news. "Now we're really brother and sister," he said, hugging Emma. "And we'll always help each other," she replied. Jennifer watched the scene with a smile Richard hadn't seen in a long time. "Richard, I think we're the ones who were adopted by her," Jennifer whispered. "She taught us how to be a family again." In the following days, the household routine settled with Emma officially as part of the family. She continued helping Michael with his exercises, but also began her own activities. Jennifer enrolled Emma in the same private school Michael attended, adapted to her needs, but made sure she kept in touch with the shelter and continued helping other children. Michael's progress accelerated significantly. In 2 weeks, he could move both legs with controlled movements. In a month, He was doing strengthening exercises that had seemed impossible before Emma's arrival. "Dr. Bennett, have you ever seen a case of recovery this fast?" Richard asked during a checkup. "Mr. Thompson, in 20 years of practice, I can say Michael's case is exceptional, not just for the speed of his physical recovery, but for the emotional transformation he's shown." "And what's your current assessment?" "If he continues at this pace, I believe in 6 months Michael could be walking with support. In a year, possibly without any assistance." Richard felt an emotion he hadn't experienced in a long time, real hope based on concrete evidence. But not everything was smooth sailing. Some challenges arose as Emma adjusted to her new life. At school, some parents questioned the presence of a street girl in the same class as their children. Jennifer had to deal with prejudices that left her furious. Richard, one mother even suggested that Emma could negatively influence the other children. "I almost lost my temper." "And how did you handle that?" "I told her that my daughter had taught Michael more about compassion and determination in 1 week than she'd probably teach her own son in years." Richard smiled. Jennifer had developed a fiercely protective instinct toward Emma. Emma, in turn, faced the challenge of adapting to a formal school environment. She was smart and a quick learner, but there were gaps in her education that needed to be filled. "Dad, Emma's struggling with math," Michael remarked one day. "Can I help her with her homework?" "Of course, son, you two can study together." Richard watched as Michael taught Emma with the same patience and kindness she had shown during his physical therapy sessions. It was heartwarming to see how their relationship had grown into a genuine sibling bond. A month after the adoption, an event tested the entire family. During an especially intense physical therapy session, Michael managed to stand for a few seconds while holding onto the parallel bars. It was a major milestone, but the effort was so great that he fainted shortly after. Richard and Jennifer were urgently called to the clinic. When they arrived, they found Michael awake but visibly shaken, with Emma sitting beside him, holding his hand. "What happened?" Jennifer asked, worried. "Michael stood up," explained Jessica, the physical therapist. "It was amazing, but the effort was too much, and he lost consciousness for a few minutes." "And how is he now?" "Physically fine, but emotionally a little scared." Richard approached Michael. "How are you feeling, son?" "Confused," Michael replied. "I stood up, Dad. I did it. But then everything went dark, and I got scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared it was a dream. Scared that when I woke up I wouldn't be able to do it again." Emma squeezed Michael's hand. "Michael, you weren't dreaming. I saw you standing, everyone did. But what if it was the last time? What if I can't do it again? Then we try tomorrow, and the next day." "Until you do it again," Emma said simply. Richard watched their exchange and realized how naturally Emma had developed the ability to calm Michael's fears. "Michael, do you want to try again now, or would you rather rest?" Jessica asked. Michael looked at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. "I want to try, but just a little." This time Michael managed to stand for nearly a minute. He didn't faint, but he was visibly exhausted when he sat back down in his chair. "I did it again," he said with a tired but genuine smile. "You did," Emma confirmed, "and tomorrow you'll do it even longer." On the way home, Jennifer made an observation that deeply moved Richard. "Richard, have you noticed how Emma never makes impossible promises to Michael? She always speaks realistically but keeps hope alive." "I have. It's a rare skill even in adults." She truly understands that recovery is a process, not a single event. That night, Michael had nightmares about returning to his previous condition. Richard and Jennifer found him crying in his room in the middle of the night. "Michael, what's wrong?" Jennifer asked, sitting on his bed. "I dreamed I woke up and couldn't move my legs again, that it had all been my imagination." Emma appeared at the door, clearly awakened by the noise. "Can I come in?" "Of course," Richard said. Emma walked over to Michael's bed. "Michael, want me to tell you what I did when I had nightmares after Grandma Ruth passed away?" Michael nodded. "I'd close my eyes and remember all the good things that happened that day, one by one. Then I would be thankful for each one of them." "And did it work?" It worked. Because when we focus on the good things that actually happened, it's harder for fear to make up bad things. Can you help me do that? Of course. Let's start. Today you stood up twice. That really happened. It did, Michael confirmed. Today your mum and dad rushed to the clinic because they worry about you. That's real. It's real. Today you helped Mrs. Parker pick flowers from the garden. That happened. It did. Richard and Jennifer watched Emma guide Michael through a list of positive experiences from the day until he calmed down and fell back asleep. How did you learn to do that? Jennifer asked when they left the room. Grandma Ruth taught me. She said our minds need help remembering the good things because they naturally focus on problems. Richard was once again amazed by Emma's practical wisdom. She had learned emotional management techniques that some adults take years of therapy to master. The following months brought steady progress, but also new challenges. Michael continued to improve physically. In 3 months, he was walking with a walker. In 5 months, he could take a few steps on his own. The progress was visible and consistent, but it required constant effort and daily determination. Emma, meanwhile, had fully adapted to school life and became one of the most beloved students in her class. Her gentle nature and willingness to help others quickly led to genuine friendships. Mom, can Emma invite some friends over for a sleepover this weekend? Michael asked one day. Of course, Jennifer replied. But why do you want Emma's friends to come? Because she's always helping everyone, and I want to repay her by making our house fun for her friends. Richard watched this exchange and noticed how Michael's protective instinct toward Emma had developed naturally. The two had truly become siblings in the deepest sense of the word. But the biggest test for the family came from an unexpected source. 6 months after the adoption, a man showed up at the Thompsons' door claiming to be Emma's biological father. My name is Brian Miller, the man told Richard, and I have reason to believe the child you adopted is my daughter. Richard felt his blood run cold. Emma's adoption had been legally processed, but there was always the chance of biological relatives appearing. Sir, do you have any documentation to support this claim? I have a birth certificate and medical records. Emma's mother was Sarah Miller, and she lived with my mother-in-law before the drinking problem. Richard knew Sarah was Emma's mother's name. His heart raced. Where have you been all these years? I was working in another city. I didn't know that she had problems. I only found out my daughter was missing when I returned last week. Richard called Jennifer to join the conversation. They needed to handle this situation very carefully. Mr. Bryan, we understand your concern. But Emma lived on the streets for almost a year after losing her grandmother. Where were you during that time? I didn't know. If I had, I would have come for her immediately. Jennifer intervened. Mr. Bryan, Emma is well adjusted here. She's going to school, has a family who loves her, and is helping our other child with health issues. Do you really think it would be in her best interest to uproot her life again? She's my daughter. I have rights. Richard felt anger rising but tried to stay calm. Mr. Bryan, rights come with responsibilities. Are you prepared to properly care for Emma? Can you provide education, medical care, emotional stability? I can learn, and I have legal rights. Jennifer looked at Richard with concern. Technically, if Brian could prove paternity and demonstrate he was fit to care for Emma, he might have legal standing. Mr. Bryan, before any legal decisions, would you like to meet Emma, see how she's doing? Brian hesitated. Is she okay? She's doing very well, Jennifer replied, but she's been through a lot of pain. We don't want to cause unnecessary trauma. I just want to meet my daughter. Richard and Jennifer exchanged glances. It was a delicate situation, but avoiding the meeting could make things worse legally. All right, but we'll do this very carefully. And if Emma shows any signs of distress, you'll need to respect that. When Emma came home from school that day, Richard and Jennifer took her aside for a private talk. Emma, we need to tell you something important, Jennifer said gently. What is it? Did something happen to Michael? No, Michael's fine. This is about you. A man came here today saying he might be your father. Emma froze completely. My father? He says his name is Brian Miller, and that he was involved with your mother. Emma stayed silent for a long time. I don't remember any Brian, she finally said. Grandma Ruth never mentioned a father. You might have been too young when he left your lives, Richard explained. What do you want to do? Would you like to meet him? Emma hesitated. If I meet him, will you send me away? Jennifer immediately knelt in front of Emma. Emma, listen to me carefully. You're our daughter now, legally and in our hearts. No one will take you from us unless it's what you truly want. But if he's really my father... Being a father isn't just about blood, Richard said. It's about care, being there, taking responsibility. This man has never done any of that for you. Emma nodded slowly. I want to meet him, but I want you both there with me. Of course, we'll be right by your side the whole time. The meeting was set for the next day, with a social worker present to ensure Emma's interests were protected. Brian Miller was a plain-looking man, visibly nervous. When he saw Emma, his eyes filled with tears. Emma, you've grown so much. Emma studied him with curiosity but no recognition. Hi, she said softly. You don't remember me? No, sir. I'm sorry. Brian looked hurt, but tried to stay composed. I'm your father, Emma. I know you were very young, but... Where were you when Grandma Ruth got sick? Emma asked with surprising seriousness. I was working far away. I didn't know she was ill. And when my mom started drinking, I didn't know about that either. And when Grandma Ruth died and I was left alone, Brian lowered his head. I didn't know any of this. If I had... But you didn't try to find out, Emma said, not aggressively, just stating a fact. Richard watched, impressed by Emma's maturity. She was asking the right questions, respectful but direct. Emma, I know I made mistakes, but now I want to take care of you. I want to be a real father to you. Emma looked at Richard and Jennifer, then back at Brian. Mr. Brian, I appreciate you wanting to care for me, but I have a family now. A family who found me when I needed them and takes care of me every day. But I'm your biological father. That has to count for something. It does, Emma said. It means you gave me life, and I'm grateful for that. But being a father is more than that. Brian fell silent, visibly moved. What do you want from me, Emma? I want you to have a good life and be happy, but I don't want to change families. I like my life now. And what if I want to be part of your life? Not to take you away, but to get to know you better. Emma looked at Richard and Jennifer, who nodded encouragingly. If you want to know who I am now, that's fine. But no pressure. And respect my family. Brian nodded, clearly emotional. I accept that. I just want the chance to show I can be a better person. In the following months, Brian visited Emma sporadically. The visits were supervised, and always in the presence of Richard and Jennifer. Gradually, Emma developed a respectful fondness for Brian, but she never wavered in her decision to stay with the Thompsons. Brian, in turn, began to understand that being a father was much more than claiming biological rights. He saw how Emma had flourished in a stable, loving environment and started supporting her decision to stay where she was. Richard, Jennifer, Brian said during one visit, I want you to know I'm grateful for what you've done for Emma. She's become an amazing girl and you gave her something I never could have back then. Brian, you can still be part of her life if you want, Jennifer replied. Not as a father, but as an important figure. Emma has room in her heart for many people who love her. That's how Brian became something like a distant uncle in Emma's life. He visited occasionally, always respecting the boundaries, and gradually built his own relationship with her. Meanwhile, Michael kept making progress. A year after Emma's arrival, he was walking normally, though he still needed exercise to maintain his strength. Dad, I want to play soccer again, Michael said one day. Are you sure you're ready? I am, and I want Emma to come watch my first game. Michael's first soccer game after the accident was an emotional event for the whole family. He didn't play the entire time, but when he stepped onto the field, he ran and kicked the ball as if he'd never stopped. Emma watched from the stands with tears in her eyes. "He did it," she whispered. "He really did it." "Yes," Jennifer said, hugging her. "Both of you did." After the game, Michael ran to Emma. "Did you see? I scored a goal." "I did. You were amazing. Emma, I'll never forget how you helped me believe again. And I'll never forget you gave me a real family." Richard watched this exchange between his two children and felt deep gratitude. Emma had come into their lives to help Michael, but she ended up saving the whole family. 2 years later, Richard and Jennifer decided to turn part of their property into a community rehabilitation center. Emma, now 9, helped plan activities for children with different special needs. Michael, fully recovered, became a volunteer, helping other kids facing challenges like his. "Dad, do you think we could adopt more children?" Michael asked one day. "Why do you ask?" "Because there are so many kids who need families, and we've learned how to do this right." Richard smiled. His children had developed a deep understanding of family and helping others. "It's a possibility, son. But let's take it slow. First, let's see how the rehab center grows." The center was an immediate success. Families from all over the city brought their children, and often it was the parents who ended up learning from Emma's approach. "Emma has a special gift," one mother told Richard. "She sees possibilities where others only see limitations." "She learned that through experience," replied Richard, "and now she's teaching others." One Saturday afternoon, 3 years after Emma arrived, the family was gathered in the garden of the rehabilitation center. Michael was playing soccer with some children, Jennifer was leading an art therapy activity, and Emma was talking to a new girl who had arrived that week. "Mr. Richard," the new girl called, "Emma said you could help me find a family." Richard walked over and knelt beside the girl. "What's your name?" "Sophie. I'm 8 years old and I've been at the shelter for 2 years. Richard looked at Emma, who smiled and nodded. "Sophie, tell me a little about yourself. What do you like to do?" As he spoke with Sophie, Richard reflected on the journey that had begun 3 years earlier. Emma had arrived as a homeless girl who wanted to help Michael. Now she was the inspiration behind a movement helping dozens of families. "Dad," Michael said, sweaty from soccer, "do you think Sophie could stay for dinner tonight? She could get to know our home better." Richard glanced at Jennifer, who nodded with a smile. "Of course, Michael. Sophie, would you like to have dinner with us?" The girl nodded shyly. That evening, during dinner, Richard observed the natural dynamic that unfolded. Michael and Emma included Sophie in their conversations, Jennifer asked gentle questions about her interests, and Sophie gradually opened up, smiling more than she probably had in a long time. "Sophie," Emma said, "do you want to see my room after dinner? I have some books you might like." "Maybe. I really like reading." "Me too. And Michael can show you his games. He has some really cool ones." Richard smiled, watching Emma effortlessly take on the role of the kind, inclusive older sister she had become with Michael. Later, after Sophie returned to the shelter, the family gathered in the living room. "Dad, Mom," Emma said, "were you thinking about adopting Sophie?" "Why do you ask?" Jennifer replied. "Because she has the same look in her eyes that I had when I first came here, like she has hope but is afraid to show it." "What do you think?" Richard asked. "I think she'd fit well in our family, and Michael likes her too." "I do," Michael confirmed. "She's smart and funny, and she needs a family." Richard and Jennifer exchanged a glance. They had discussed this possibility a few times before, but hearing their children express the same wish made the decision clearer. "Well," Jennifer said, "we'll talk to the social workers and see if it's possible." Emma smiled and hugged Jennifer. "Thank you for always opening your hearts to those in need." 6 months later, Sophie officially became the 3rd child in the Thompson family. The adjustment was smoother this time, as Michael and Emma already knew how to help someone feel at home. Richard watched the 3 children playing in the garden and reflected on how much his life had changed since that day at the clinic when Emma appeared to help Michael. What had started as one child trying to help another had grown into an expanded family and a rehabilitation center, making a difference in the entire community. "Richard," Jennifer said as she approached, "what are you thinking about? How a 7-year-old girl managed to change our lives so profoundly?" She taught us that helping others is the truest form of healing. And that family isn't about blood, but about choice and commitment. They stood in silence for a few minutes, watching the children. Jennifer, do you think we made the right choice all these years? Richard, look at our children. Michael is healthy and happy. Emma has become a natural leader, and Sophie is thriving. The center is helping dozens of families. How could that not be the right choice? Richard nodded. Jennifer was right. The choices they had made, starting with trusting an unknown girl, had led to transformations they could never have imagined. "Dad! Mom!" Michael shouted from the garden. "Come see what Sophie managed to do." Sophie was standing on one of the exercise bars at the center, balancing with her arms wide open and a huge smile on her face. "I don't believe in heights," she said, laughing. "Emma taught me that fear is just a feeling, not a fact." Richard smiled. It was the same wisdom Emma had brought to Michael years before, now being passed on. "Richard," Jennifer whispered, "do you realize what's happening?" "What?" "Emma is raising a generation of children who believe they can overcome any obstacle. She's multiplying hope." Richard watched as Emma helped Sophie safely climb down from the bar, while Michael cheered encouragingly. "You're right. She's not just helping individual children, she's creating a culture of resilience." That night, after the children had gone to bed, Richard found Emma still awake, reading in her room. "Emma, can I come in?" "Of course, Dad." Richard sat on her bed. "I want to tell you something important." "What is it?" "When you came into our lives 3 years ago, I thought you were here to help Michael. But now I understand you were here to teach all of us what truly matters." "I didn't teach anything, Dad. I just did what Grandma Ruth taught me. When you can help, you help. But you turned it into something much bigger. The center, the other kids, our family, all of it started with your way of seeing the world." Emma was silent for a moment. "Dad, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." "Sometimes I still have nightmares about when I lived on the streets. And when that happens, I remember everything that came after. Michael walking again our family, Sophie laughing today. And then I know everything I went through was worth it." Richard felt tears forming in his eyes. "Emma, you didn't have to suffer to deserve joy." "I know, but suffering taught me to appreciate the good things, and it taught me to recognize when others are going through what I went through. And that makes you special. It makes me someone who understands, and everyone can understand if they pay attention." Richard hugged Emma. "I love you so much, sweetheart, and I'm so proud of the person you are." "I love you too, Dad, and thank you for believing in me when I was just a strange girl at the clinic. You were never strange. You were always special. We just took a while to see it." 5 years after Emma's arrival, the Thompson family had adopted 2 more children, and the rehabilitation center had become a regional model. Emma, now 12, had developed her own techniques for motivation and emotional support, which were being studied by professionals in the field. "Emma," said Dr. Bennett during a visit to the center, "have you ever thought about studying medicine or psychology when you grow up?" "I think about it a lot," she replied, "but I want to study a way to help that combines both." "How so?" "Doctors take care of the body, psychologists take care of the mind, but sometimes people need someone to take care of their hope. I want to learn how to do that scientifically." Dr. Bennett was impressed. "Emma, you're describing a very new field in medicine called integrative medicine. That's exactly what you're talking about. Then that's what I want to study." Richard, who was listening to the conversation, felt immense pride. Emma had turned her personal experience into a career vision that could help thousands. That evening, during family dinner, Emma shared her discovery about integrative medicine. "That's amazing, Emma," said Michael. "You always knew you wanted to help people, and now you've found the scientific way to do it." "And I'll help you," said Sophie. "When I grow up, I want to work with you." "And I can handle the business side," offered Michael. "We could build an even bigger rehabilitation center." Jennifer watched the conversation between her three children as they planned a future together and felt a deep emotion. "Richard, are you hearing this?" "I am. They're planning to dedicate their lives to helping others." And it all started with Emma whispering, "Believe in God's strength and rise," to Michael in a clinic. Richard nodded, amazed at how a simple phrase had become the life philosophy of an entire family. A few years later, when Emma was in college studying integrative medicine, Michael was pursuing business administration, and Sophie was in high school, the family received an unexpected call. "Thompson family?" said a voice on the other end. "My name is Rebecca. I'm a producer for a television program. We'd like to do a feature on your work at the rehabilitation center." Richard hesitated. The family had always preferred to keep a low profile. "What would the focus of the story be?" "We'd like to tell the story of how a homeless girl transformed a family and then an entire community. It's an inspiring story that could motivate others." Richard discussed the proposal with Jennifer and the children. Emma was the most reluctant. "Dad, I don't want the story to be about me being special. I want it to be about how anyone can make a difference." "But Emma, your story could inspire other kids in similar situations," Jennifer argued. "Then let's tell it in a way that shows what matters isn't me, it's the choice to help." The feature aired 6 months later and had a national impact. Hundreds of families reached out, wanting to know how they could create similar centers in their communities. Emma, now 17, began receiving invitations to speak at universities and medical conferences. "Emma," Richard said before one of her first speeches, "are you nervous?" "A little. But I remember what Grandma Ruth used to say. When you speak from the heart, the right words come." Emma's speech was a success. She spoke about seeing possibilities instead of limitations, turning personal pain into compassion for others, and how small acts of kindness can create waves of change. "The question isn't whether you have something to offer," she said during the talk. "It's whether you'll choose to offer what you have." After the speech, a woman in the audience approached Emma. "My daughter has been in a wheelchair for 2 years after an accident. She's lost all hope. What can I do?" You can start by asking her what dreams she still has. Then help her see those dreams are still possible, just maybe in a different way. "That's all?" "That's everything," Emma replied simply. Sometimes people just need someone to believe in them when they can't believe in themselves. When Emma graduated with a degree in integrative medicine, Michael had finished business school and Sophie was starting psychology. Together, they expanded the rehabilitation center into a national network. Richard, now 55, had delegated most of his business responsibilities to focus on managing the centers. "Richard," Jennifer said one day, "do you regret shifting your professional focus?" "Jennifer, I built a company that makes money, but with the kids I'm building something that creates hope. Which one do you think will last longer?" "You're right. And look at what they've managed to build." They were watching the inauguration of the network's 10th center. Emma cut the ribbon alongside Michael and Sophie, surrounded by hundreds of families who had benefited from their programs. "Dad, Mom," Emma approached them after the ceremony. "I want to thank you for something." "What is it?" "For never trying to turn me into someone else. You gave me structure and education, but let me be who I was." "Emma, who you were was already perfect," Jennifer replied. "We just provided the environment for you to flourish." "And look how she flourished," said Richard, pointing to the bustling center full of activities. That evening, during the inauguration celebration, Michael gave a speech that moved everyone. 10 years ago, I was in a wheelchair thinking my life was over. A 7-year-old girl came up to me and said, "Believe in God's strength and rise." Today, not only have I risen, but hundreds of others have risen with us. And it all started with someone who chose to believe when it would have been easier to give up. The audience gave a standing ovation. Richard looked at Emma, who was crying with emotion. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking about my grandma. She always said that when you plant seeds of kindness, you never know what kind of forest will grow. And what a forest it has become," Jennifer remarked. Years later, when Emma became an international figure in integrative medicine, she never forgot to mention in her lectures that it all began with lessons learned on the streets and a grandmother who cared for the elderly at a shelter. The most powerful medicine, she often said, doesn't come from labs. It comes from the human heart, willing to believe in the strength of others. Michael became a renowned social entrepreneur, creating sustainable models for rehabilitation centers that were replicated in multiple countries. Sophie specialized in child psychology and developed specific protocols for children who had endured traumas similar to what she and Emma had experienced. Richard and Jennifer, now grandparents to many adopted grandchildren who came through their centers, became speakers on adoption and unconventional families. "Richard," Jennifer said during one of their last talks together, "what would you say to someone considering adopting an older child?" "I'd say, you're not just giving a family to a child, you're receiving a teacher disguised as a son or daughter, and the lessons you'll learn could transform not only your family, but your entire worldview." During a visit to the first center they had founded, now run by former patients who had become therapists, Richard noticed a plaque at the entrance that read, "Believe in the strength within you and rise, Emma Thompson." "Richard," called Emma, now a doctor and the national director of the network, "did you see the new plaque?" "I did. Don't you think you're being too modest? It should say Dr. Emma Thompson." "No, Dad, anyone can be a doctor. But I want to be remembered as someone who helped people believe in themselves. That's the most important title." Richard hugged his daughter, now a 25-year-old woman who had dedicated her life to multiplying the hope she had learned to cultivate on the streets. "Emma, do you have any idea the impact you've made on the world?" "I have an idea of the impact you made on my life. The rest was just a consequence." "No, sweetheart, the rest was your choice. You could have used everything you went through as an excuse to be bitter. Instead, you used it as motivation to help others. That's what Grandma Ruth taught me. Pain turned into compassion becomes healing." Just then, Michael and Sophie approached, bringing some new children who had arrived at the center that week. "Emma," said a girl around 8 years old, "the lady over there said you can help me believe I'll walk again." Emma knelt down in front of the girl. "What's your name?" "Lily." "Lily, can I tell you a secret?" The girl nodded. "A long time ago, I was a girl who lived on the streets, and I met a boy who thought he'd never walk again. Do you know what I told him?" "What?" "Believe in God's strength and rise." And did it work? It did. But not because I said magic words. It worked because he chose to believe and work to get better, and now he helps other kids make the same choice. Lily looked at Michael. "Are you that boy?" "That's me," Michael replied, smiling. "And now I can run, play soccer, and do everything I ever wanted to do." "Can you teach me?" "Of course. But first, you have to choose to believe it's possible." Richard watched this scene unfold once again and realized he had witnessed something much bigger than the healing of one family. He had seen the birth of a movement that would keep spreading far beyond anything they could imagine. "Jennifer," he whispered, "I think I finally understand why Emma came into our lives." "Why?" "It wasn't just to save Michael. It was to teach us that saving each other is what gives life meaning." Jennifer nodded, watching Emma begin to work with Lily in the same patient, hopeful way she had with Michael years before. "And the lesson keeps spreading," Jennifer said. "Every child she helps will help others. It's an endless cycle." "A cycle of hope," Richard finished. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, as they had every Thursday for over 15 years, Richard shared a thought aloud. "Do you know the greatest gift Emma ever gave us?" "What?" Michael and Sophie asked in unison. "She taught us that when we open our hearts to help one person, we're really opening a door to a world of possibilities. And that we never know where the next important lesson will come from," Jennifer added. "That's why it's important to treat everyone we meet with respect," Emma said, "because any one of them could be an angel in disguise." "Or a teacher disguised as a homeless girl," Michael said, winking at Emma. "Or a brother disguised as a patient," Emma replied, returning the affection. "Or a family disguised as strangers," Sophie finished. Richard smiled, watching the love and understanding they had built over the years. "Well," he said, raising his glass of juice, "a toast then." "To what?" Jennifer asked. to God's disguises, and to our ability to recognize them when they appear. They all raised their glasses, and Richard knew that no matter what the future held, his family had learned the most important lesson, that love multiplied always returns multiplied. The end. So, what did you think of this story of resilience and hope? Could you feel the emotion in every moment? Share in the comments which part touched your heart the most. And if you've ever known a similar story in your own life, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories that will move and inspire you. Your likes and comments make all the difference in bringing more messages of hope to those who need them.